Okay, so this is the second of hopefully three joint Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen meetings for the purpose of reviewing operating budgets for the various town departments. Before we get started, I would like to congratulate Beth Heller. Of course, Beth never told us, but the internet did. Beth was elected
Oh, that.
to choose.
Well, it happened yesterday.
Well, you could, Beth is now the chairperson of the South Central Regional Council of Governments, which is also known as COG, is that correct?
Correct, or SCROG.
A unanimous
Do
selection
it SCROG.
of 15 municipalities from the greater New Haven area, so I just wanted to congratulate Beth.
Thank you. Thank you. Are you gonna do that?
I didn't know you did it, but I saw it on the internet
This
today.
happened yesterday, I didn't have time. Thank you.
Okay, the first item on our agenda is, as is customary, each year, we have with us tonight Scott Bassett from RSM, and and he was kind enough to do a special little
Thank you.
handout to us, to aid us in the presentation. So Scott, welcome.
Otherwise, it's this.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Scott Bassett. I'm a partner with the audit firm of RSM, and we conducted the audit for the town of Woodbridge for June 30th, 2019. What I tried to do, some years I kind of go through it pretty quickly, but I just gave you a handout so you can follow along as I go through pretty much the same points as I've done in the past. So we'll just go through the handout. Our audit scope, what we were hired to do, were to give an opinion on the financial statements and on the major programs for the state single audit. So there's two components to our audit process. We have some required communications that as your independent auditor, are required to give to you, acting as the audit committee. And those have to do with accounting policies. There were no really significant changes in any accounting policies in the 2019 year. Included in your financial statements are estimates, things that you can't, that are brought together just by best judgment and analytical reviews. And the big estimates in your financial statements really have to do with the pension and OPEB. Although you belong to the MERS program, they have estimates in there that do impact your net pension liability, and the same with the OPEB. The two big estimates in there are the discount rates that are being used and the mortality tables that are being used. As customary during the course of the audit, both here at the town and at the Board of Ed, we did not encounter any problems as we went through the process. We had no disagreements with management about as far as accounting policies or auditing standards. And the trial balances presented us were correct. There were no audit adjustments made, no uncorrected audit adjustments throughout the financial statements. We do take a look at internal controls. We do not opine on internal controls, but we certainly take a look at those. And there's three levels of internal controls that you look at. You look at whether it be a material weakness, a significant deficiency, or a control deficiency. The town of Woodbridge had none of those in the current year based on our testing. We don't think management did not consult with any other accountants for any best practices or controversies in accounting applications. And at the end of the audit, we have management sign a representation letter. Basically, that representation letter says everything we asked for, we were given. We spell out our responsibilities, and management takes responsibility for their portion of the financial statements. And talking about that, I describe on the next page kind of what our responsibilities are as your independent auditor and what the responsibilities of management is. Management puts the financial statements together. Their job is to make sure that the financial statements are in accordance with U.S. GAAP, and they have an internal control process in place that would detect or prevent material fraud or misappropriation of assets. Our job is to express an opinion on those financial statements and to give reasonable assurance that the financial statements are materially correct. The town received clean, unmodified opinions on each of the financial statements in the current year. Just to give you a little flavor of how we go through this process, my team spends out here probably 550 hours going through the books and records of the town and the Board of Ed, working with Tony and Al at both sides and pulling things together. So we probably come out in August and finish up, in and out We spend 3 or 4 weeks here, take a break as we wait for some third-party information that comes in, and then finish up probably after Thanksgiving, go through the drafts and try to hit by mid-December as far as issuing the financial statement. So it's a pretty long process. We'd like to shorten that window, but we really don't get third-party reports to sometime in November. So it's kind of hard to do that, especially with you being involved in the MERS and those programs, those statements coming in a little bit later. The financial statements themselves, there's really 3 bases of accounting in the financial statements. There's a full accrual basis of accounting, which is something you see probably once a year when Tony presents the report. Those measure your long-term assets and your long-term liabilities, and at the end of the year, your assets exceeded your liabilities by $56 million. Included in that are your infrastructure assets, your schools, your buildings, and things of that nature. The general fund, which is your operating fund, is the fund you talk probably most about as you go through the year. At the end of the current fiscal year, the unassigned fund balance of the general fund was $6.5 million, while the total fund balance was 7.9. And to put that in percentages, the fund balance as it relates to expenditures and operating transfers out, the unassigned fund balance was 13%, and the total fund balance was 16% of the same amount. So pretty good measurements. I know you have a goal of keeping your fund balance within a range each year, and I think you accomplished that in the current year. The Woodbridge Country Club, that's a program that you've issued short-term notes for. Those short-term notes sit on the balance sheet, which pulls the deficit in there. We have been paying that down each year, and I believe this year it's at $4.5 million at the end of the year. So I don't think there were any surprises in the results as far as what's reported to you on a monthly basis, which is customary as Tony goes through the process. The notes to the financial statements were pretty consistent with last year. The one change, I'm not going to go through each note. I'm going to skip down to note 6 and then follow into the pension note. The one big change you'll see in your financial statements this year is really the net pension liability as it relates to the MERS program. That's the state retirement program. What they did in the current year is they took their discount rate in 1 year from 8% down to 7%, which once you drop that discount rate, your liability will increase because of that. That's a big drop in 1 year. Typically, you might smooth that in by a quarter to a half a percentage each year. They took the full percent going from 8 to 7, which really triggered an increase in what that liability is to each of the contributing towns. And Tony will know more than this than I will, but based on that, being a participant in that plan and the liability going up, they're probably going to have some increases in the required contributions as you go forward over the next several years. I think they've sent out some literature on that, and they're smoothing it, or there's some talk of just how they're going to blend it in. But that's the impact of the state lowering that discount rate by that 1%. So just to put that in real dollar amounts, that liability increased almost by $12 million because of that change, the portion that was associated with the town of Woodbridge. So a big number. So that is something, something that I would say unusual, something as you go through your budget process. I mean, I'm sure it's something that you've spoken about. There are 2 new GASB standards that I'll talk about that come up in the next couple of years. One has to do with fiduciary activities. Fiduciary activities are activities in which you act as an agent. Money comes in, money comes out, and there's no revenue producing activity with those type of transactions. Well, the GASB has come out and said, well, we're going to take a harder look at those, and really what it's going to impact is really your school system, and if there truly are student activity funds, or is it a charge for service? And although it really doesn't mean anything as far as the financial statements go, rather other than geography, the monies will still be accounted for the same way. They'll just be presented a different way on your financial statements. But whether it be for an athletic trip or for a booster club or something like that, you have to go through a process as far as administration, and that determines what type of fund it will be. But again, I don't think it has a major impact other than geography on the financial statements. The next one will be GASB 87, which really is the one that is getting a lot of buzz, and that's to do with leases. And basically, although I don't think I have a big impact out here, It's really, there's no such thing as an operating lease anymore. It's all capital leases. So if you have a lease that's over 12 months, it's going to go onto your fixed asset schedule and be depreciated, and that lease will be a long-term liability as some other ones are. Excuse me. As I mentioned, you did have a state single audit. That is required by the state of Connecticut. The town received approximately $2 million in total state awards for 2019, and we had to test 2 or 3 major programs to get the percentage of coverage that we need based on those state requirements, and we again gave clean, unmodified opinions on those. They probably had to do with some construction and some education grants that we tested, so both here at the town side and at the board side are some grants that we had to test in the current year. And as I said, we do take a look at your internal controls based on government auditing standards, and we go through that process. And through that process, we did not identify any weaknesses in those internal controls based on the transactions that we tested. We test the major transactions, as you would imagine: property taxes, grant revenue, vendor invoices, payroll records. And then we also, with your actuaries, both at the state side and with the OPEB plan, we send those assumptions out to our internal actuaries to make sure those assumptions are reasonable. So again, I always close in saying the information you receive is accurate based on the audit that we've done. Tony and Al do a great job of pulling everything together. I think we managed a nice audit and got through to some good results in the current year.
Okay, any questions for Scott?
Thank you for preparing this.
Did you like that?
Yeah, that was a good idea.
Oh, good, good. I like
Instead of trying to thumb through 800 pages,
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
what I figured, I try to give the references, just to spend a little time, the page references, so if you want to go back to the big booklet, you could take a look.
No, this is fine.
Thank you, Scott.
Scott, thank you.
All right, have a great night. Thank you.
Yep.
You as well.
Yeah, I know.
It's terrible.
I know.
Sorry.
Okay, so we are going to begin tonight with the Police Department, which is tab 1210. 1210. How are you, Chief?
I'm well, how are you? Good
good.
evening.
Might as well just go through the highlights of the budget.
All right. So, pretty much similar to our current budget that we're operating under now for next fiscal year, '21. We budgeted the same, total of 25 sworn personnel, one of whom will be funded hopefully by the Woodbridge Board of Ed. And even with those staffing levels, as we know, they've been reduced over the past few years. We do the best we can with the resources we're allotted and get the job done. Our dispatchers and our officers still remain certified in excess of all the basic state of Connecticut mandates, and we've been able to continue to assign 2 patrol officers as school resource officers at both of our schools, the Beecher Road School and the Amity High School. Moving on into the contract, as everybody knows, both of the collective bargaining units for the town, the police and the dispatchers, their contracts expired this past June, and they both settled those contracts. And in correlation with that, the most significant change in our upcoming budget is on the contractual side, which you'll see reflects the salary wage increases of 2.5% for both fiscal year '20 and projects out into fiscal year '21. So that's the most significant change that we have with that. Some of the other changes, there's really just a few changes, a few increases. The first significant one is the overtime budget. It's 50430, police overtime. We increased that by 25,000, and only to provide a realistic figure of what to expect for fiscal year '21. We're in the same ballpark for last year, and and it was reduced. And we do our best to stay within that, but historically, looking back I look back over the last 6 years, and, you know, the overtime has ranged from as high as like over 187,000 back in fiscal year 13 to our lowest was at fiscal year 18, it was at 143,000. And at the end of the December payroll that that we've just finished up with not too long ago, we were right around the 67,000 mark, and that was including the unfortunate, and unprecedented, again, second homicide in a short period of time. But that was including, some costs attributed to that. And so, at 67, it's gonna put us right at about, if everything stays on track, around 134. That's what we were projecting. So that's how we came up with that number. And then with the current wage increases from, 5%, that went up. And we still have currently 2 unfilled vacancies, and so those shortages also generate overtime. And like I said, we do our best to control overtime, but, we all know there's some things we can't do 24/7, 365. We don't know what weather, inclement weather it comes our way. We don't know, what crimes happen, and, most often we found they're at the most inopportune times for our personnel and financially too, on the weekends and the holiday weekends and at night. But there's also some other variables that come into play. I just want to make sure that everybody realizes those too, because some of the stuff I think is common and everyday things that we provide, service that we provide, but I think sometimes they don't realize that they generate operating costs on our behalf that we cover. So we talked about, patrol coverage and those requirements to, to mandate our levels and to cover vacations, sick time, and things like that. That's all increased, when we have staffing vacancies. We have calls that arise. Some are late calls, they come in at the end of the shift. They have to stay and do that. Some continuing calls, ongoing investigations, the after-hour calls. One big one that hits us sometimes is the storm-related overtime. So the utilities, they do pay overtime for private duty, tree trimming and maintenance work, stuff like that. But costs that arise that recover us to cover traffic posts and man those, and things that are associated with weather and acts of God, like wires down, trees down, stuff like that. That's all stuff that we have to pay for. We have to cover it, but it comes out of our budget. We're not reimbursed by the utilities for that, but the spots have to be covered. And then some town-related overtime that comes up. We cover security and traffic at the election and the polls that come up for the referendums, the town, national elections. We have, events on the green, the concerts and picnics. Woodbridge Youth Services events, we provide an officer for that, but we, we take that out of our budget. Beecher Road and Amity High School security issues that, that arise if we feel it's necessary, there's something going on and we want to put extra people there. We step and do that, and then also to practice for security drills there. At Halloween time, we still, put on extra patrols for that, and we put on extra patrols to cover for the truck or treat and the fireworks event, because, there's a large amount of people and a large amount of traffic that we need to provide for that. And, public works jobs that come up, paving and milling at times in hazardous locations, security at town meetings sometimes if it's a contentious meeting. So some of those things, they come up and it's just kind of everyday occurrences and ongoing throughout the year. We never know what will arise, but that all feeds into our overtime, little by little, and then by the end of the fiscal year, it kind of adds up. So that's the increase on the overtime. Second increase that I was going to talk about was our overtime for training. We raised that by $2,000. It's not much. It really, pretty much, it's just to cover the 2.5% raises. We still have to do our training. I would have liked to increase our training budget line so we could do more training, but we're trying to, keep within some kind of restraint and not go overboard with that. So we kept our training hours at where we were and just increased to cover the cost for that. On the line for medical expenses, we increased a small amount, and that's just because the costs for the polygraphs and some of the other evaluations that are mandated, those costs went up. The second largest one on the operational side was 53510, repair, maintenance, and machinery and equipment line. So in fiscal year 18 and fiscal year 19, both of those years, it was budgeted for $38,000. And then this current year that we're in now, discussing and working it with Tony, and with the new radio project that was undergoing and has been implemented, the new simulcast radio system. With that upgrade, we didn't have to, we could eliminate our service contract on the old one, and the new warranties took over. So with that, in fiscal year 20, we were able to reduce from 38,000 down to, it came out to like 11,900 and change. So it was a reduction of 26,000 back then. But since that, and since this past July, as we move in, and coming up, as we move into fiscal year 21, we've had several other warranties that have since expired. So we have to take out, not associated with the radio system, but with other things that we have that have now come out of warranty. And so we had to pick up service contracts for those. So that's the increase on that. That was service contracts for the voice recording system. Our new APHIS machine that we bought a while ago, that just came out of warranty, or will be coming out of warranty. That was a cost. Our scheduling software and our license plate reader will all come out and need to be covered under service contracts during fiscal year 21. So that's how we got to that $10,000 for that. 54620 dues went up a small amount, and that's just to cover dues for CPI, Connecticut Police Chiefs Association, and our costs with that. And the technical line just went up a couple $100, and that was increases just for our investigative software, LexisNexis, the search engine for that increased. And then the final two, we're at the end of that budget, under capital machinery and capital furniture and fixtures, 57410 and 57470. So under capital machinery last year, that was eliminated out of the budget. This year we put in for $3,900 there. One is to replace a TASER, which we've been doing pretty much annually or semi-annually now. The TASER's the new technology, and they come out of warranty. So that was one thing. And a lot of the stuff we would, in the past, we were able to, years past, be able to get grants for those, but the grants are pretty much been eliminated and far and few between, so there's no grant for that. We need to, get body camera batteries. They're looking for a new camera for ISU, and some stuff from our property room is, the original one that we've had in the building there, and it's kind of bursting at the seams, so they're looking for more storage bins and a gun safe for that, just so we could make do with what we have. And under capital furniture, I'm asking for shelving and some bookcases for the administrative offices and ISU. They're doing some remodeling in, but we're looking to, with the phase 2 of the computer project, as we move, we have a server room next to the administrative offices, and we have filing system in there, but there's also some area taken up with the servers. So when that project is done, which is going to commence soon, the servers will all be able to come out of there, so we'll have some extra space, and we're just looking to utilize that the best we could and get some storage and shelving for that. So those are the increases that we have. Like I said, most of it's contractually governed by the obligations that we have with the contracts. And I'd just like to say, with the being such close proximity to New Haven and the other cities that are bordering us, just like all the other communities around, we're starting to, as we're seeing, getting more and more of a spillover into the suburbs of crimes that usually are more city-like. We had the 2 homicides in the last 18 months. We had the armed bank robbery, a month ago. So with all that's going around, locally and nationally, And the demands, it's, you know, it's important that we remain vigilant and well-staffed and well-prepared. But I think, you know, with the budget, we're pretty frugal and straightforward with it, and we're hoping to do the best, well, we will do the best we could with, you know, working within the parameters of the budget, but it should work with what we're asking for.
Questions?
So Frank, the total calls for service on your summary sheet, is that, you're estimating 28,000. Are those all to dispatch?
Yes, they all, one way or another, they come through dispatch.
They come through dispatch?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
even if
So
they're officer generated, but they don't,
Right,
but
right,
either way,
right.
they come through
They
dispatch.
come through
Correct.
dispatch?
Yes.
All right. And Tony actually shared with us at our last budget review on Tuesday that he's proposing something a little different for information systems.
Yes.
And so how might that impact how you currently provide those services? Because you do that internally. So if
Right.
an officer is freed up from those duties, could that actually help with your overtime, reduce your overtime a little bit?
It could probably help with the overtime, and it would probably help a lot with supervision, because, you know, as we know, the person that's assigned to the IT for years now is a supervisor. And we did, with Tony and with the vendor and all that
Yes.
that we're looking into, we discussed that with them, and some of the key aspects with them was, you know, obviously we need the 24/7, 365 support,
Sure.
which they provide, but one of the key things that they had was that they have a technician, I guess you would call him, on staff, who's he's actually a retired police officer from one of the local cities that we've known, you know, from the past as well. And he's been with the company, and he kind of, so he has that law enforcement nexus that we
Right.
need, and that's something, you know, that the high school, you know, they were good in what they did, but they didn't have,
Right.
on the law enforcement side, that we weren't able to get
Right, there's
that
special
value from
systems
them.
that you
So
have, yeah.
this company does provide that, so
Uh-huh.
with that being said, he knows some of our needs
Okay,
of the agency, and he knows how to address them, so that should greatly assist in giving our supervisor more time and to be more of a coordinator than have to do it hands-on. But with that said, he still have to be in the mix and have some on, but this should be a great asset to move in the right direction of assisting and
Okay.
more efficient. Yeah.
Anybody else?
How many sworn officers do we have currently?
Currently,
Yeah.
we're budgeted for the 25, like I said, you know, but right now, we just hired an officer, we're down 3, and we hired an officer at the last Board of Police Commissioners meeting, who will be starting in the next few weeks. So right now, we're down 2 officers. So we're down to total of 23.
So we have 23. Okay, thanks.
Anything else?
So we have 2 vacancies, if that makes sense.
Now, in the 23 are the 2 SROs, correct?
Correct.
So really, you don't have 23 patrolling the streets.
No.
Okay. That's it? Okay,
All right?
thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Just out of curiosity, I hate to even bring it up, are you involved in the Tim Smith investigation, or is that state?
The state assisted with it, and they're helping with the way they work is they handle it kind of as if it was a fatal accident for like one of the state troop barracks.
Yeah.
So their crash reconstruction team comes in, and they did all the mechanicals, so they'll do the vehicle inspection. We have that coming up at the end of the week. And all the measurements and diagrams and all the mechanical and physical aspects of it. And then we're doing the background history of 24-hour checks and all that. So it's a combined effort. Yeah, they don't take the whole thing anymore. So, terrible, tragic accident.
Terrible.
I do have one more question.
Sure.
So we also heard from the Amity superintendent, and about the plan to add 2 additional SROs for the middle schools. So how does that impact you? Does it in any way?
No, because we really don't, our SROs just stays here. He does, the Amity one doesn't go to the middle school, so it really shouldn't have any impact on us.
Okay, and you don't think that they'll have any cross coverage, anything like that?
No, because we, and even like an orange officer coming here really wouldn't have jurisdiction, and we wouldn't have jurisdiction in their communities either.
Okay,
So, yeah, it wouldn't be, I think it's good for those, for those 2 communities, and, we're just a step ahead of them with
Okay.
that, so, but it won't have any interference with us. And actually, it'd be a good for our SRO to have another law enforcement person to collaborate with and share information back and forth, so,
okay,
yeah, it should be good.
great. Okay, thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
We're meeting Monday night at Amity to discuss,
Those
I'll get a
things.
lot more answers on
Okay,
that,
all right.
because I'm not happy about that, to be honest.
Thanks,
Okay,
guys.
next is Registrar of Voters, which is tab 1130. Should I make an announcement? Really, the moment is left?
Hi, I'm Anna Dickerson. Elia Alexiadis can't be here tonight. He had a personal problem, so he just is leaving it to me. The budget is covering most of what we usually cover. Of course, you know, this is a presidential election coming up, which is always a lot more intense. And we are anticipating training several new poll workers because we're running a little low on our group to have in. So we trained a couple of new ones for the Amity, during the last Amity budget bond referendum. And so we're hoping to staff up for the presidential. One of the things that is not quite covered in our budget, and I didn't know what to do with it, is this whole new cybersecurity issue that's coming up. And so we have added an extra hour a week for each of us. This, instead of 4 hours, we've allocated 5 hours because there's so much new to learn. As a matter of fact, I just got a 12-page manual written by a non-English speaking person on doing this new 2-factor authentication to get onto the voter registration system. So it's going to involve not only a password, but an email. They're going to send us a code in our email that we have to put in as well. So I'm trying to digest this, and I think I'm going to have to proof it a little bit because it's very difficult to read. I don't know if there's anything else that's exciting coming up. The Secretary of State.
Training with that?
Pardon?
Are they gonna come to you and help you?
No, I think we could figure it out, but it's just the way they word it is really complicated. It's really not that complicated a structure. The only thing we have to do is we have to get emails for our staff as well. And we can't use registrars, the registrars, and we each have to have separate
Everybody was
ones.
using one,
So
yeah.
it's just gonna involve your time.
Yeah. And I think once we get it set up and figured, it'll start beginning of February, so we have to, I put mine in already. I just wanted to see if it would do, and it didn't do anything yet, so.
I couldn't get
I don't
mine to
know.
work, and
Oh.
that's usual with some of the programs we
brave.
have.
And the Secretary of State still has not selected any e-poll book, system, so, and I'm not sure whether they are going to or not, especially now with this cybersecurity issue, because the e-poll books would be possibly online, and I don't know what they're going to do with that. So that's kind of something to watch. As far as the education's concerned, anytime there's something new that comes up, I always go to the class because I figure somebody should know what's going on. They keep modifying the system that reports the election night statistics from the tape, and every time they have a new version of that, I go and take the class because it's somebody should know exactly what's going on, and I figured it might as well be me. So That's,
It has to be you.
it has to be me,
Okay, are there
yes.
any questions for the registrar?
I just give you a lot of credit. I'm glad I'm not doing it anymore.
If any of you would like to work for the election, please let me know. We'd be
It
happy
does
to
keep
have you.
getting more and more complicated. each
Exactly.
year,
Yeah.
You know, and it's so different.
Mm-hmm.
It's, and I guess Denise Merrill had sent out a letter
Yeah, we
to
got it.
all the
Yeah.
mayors and first
Yeah, it came to
selectmen.
me and I shared it with Stephanie and I hope she
Yeah,
got
thank
you
you.
today
I
to see
appreciate
that.
because, our offices are very difficult. There's a lot to it. I, passed around a listing of all of the responsibilities of our office, my office. And actually, we register people and we take care of, everything that goes on in the registrar's office when they're not there. So, I've increased my budget, the election supplies, I've doubled the election supplies because we'll probably have, I'm thinking we're gonna have 1,000 absentee ballots for this presidential election alone. We have the machines, we're gonna have to use 2 different sets of machines, so those will all be in play. We'll also have a primary in the summer. We'll have the presidential preference primary in April, but for this coming year, in August, we can have, up to 4 primaries, depending on who's running against who. Those would be state, federal, and town, elected officials that could primary. And then we'll have to see what happens in November, but it's gonna be a very big year, the whole year is big. We have, all the justices of the peace are gonna be reelected this year. And if you have any questions, if you really could take a look at the list of stuff that we have in our office, it's not just elections, it's not just land records, it's everything. There's quite a bit.
One thing I forgot to mention, I just started last week, I think, I put a little bit up on the town website to educate the voters on what their requirements are to be able to vote in the primary, presidential primary, because there's a 3-month restriction there, and some of them don't understand that if they're registered as an independent, that is a party, that's not unaffiliated, and they have the same 3-month restriction, so I'm trying to put in something maybe every month. People still don't understand what election day registration requirements are, so every month I'd like to put a little bit in to educate the voters as to how the whole system runs.
We also have election day registration, which is another nightmare. That's gonna be, we'll have to see what, that creates another problem. We have to have special ballots for that. The ballots are 50 cents each, for each one of those ballots. Very expensive, very expensive. And then there's maintaining the machines, servicing the machines, and we have 6 machines now because we have 2 districts. So we have 3 machines for each district. If we can get ourselves put back together again to one district, it would save us quite a bit of money.
That requires 2
And
staffs,
we're working on that, but.
2 separate staffs too,
Yeah,
so
2
we don't have.
moderators, 2 ballot clerks, everything. It's double of everything. And sometimes 4 times. Sometimes if we have a primary, there could be 4 primaries in one room. So we really don't have a lot of room to play with with that, but it's very expensive.
What's the process, Stephanie, that you would follow to get them combined?
Well, I've written to Themis Clarities, I've written to George Logan, many times. Every time I see them, I remind them. It's supposed to be coming up in 2020, where they redistrict and possibly could put us back together. That's, and anybody else that wants to call them, I would appreciate it very much, because it's really, it's a difficult situation for us too, because we're a small town and there's only one place we can have the polling place. And we'll probably have 7,000 or 7,500 registered voters by this presidential election, I bet.
If you want to see how complicated it is, come to the presidential in the morning when people are trying to figure out which district they're in because they don't know.
Right. Still. And that's been for 10 years, so.
I know.
But,
I
but
fall
like I
into
said.
that category, so that's okay.
Yeah.
It's like, which one am I again?
I also increased the land records, because we're putting our maps onto the land record system, so there's an increase there. And capital.
We're doing town clerk now, by the way.
Yeah,
I
well,
figured
we're
that out.
together, that's why.
I guess.
I know, I'm sorry, we have, I have elections in my,
Yeah, right, okay.
Also,
That's fine.
so-
That's fine.
yeah. But if you have any questions?
Any questions for,
So the doubling of
Anna or
election supplies
Stephanie?
is related to the,
Well, I
Elections
doubled the
coming,
election
yeah.
supplies because.
related
yeah,
to that, yeah.
Yeah, because we'll
Okay.
have a lot of this going on this year. every other year, and even with the town elections, it's more money, but with the presidential and the governor's election, especially the presidential election, it's really gonna be double. Plus legal ads will go up, postage will go up, you know, all of that.
Anything for anybody? No?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
Good, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Which brings us to tab 1610, which is Conservation Commission,
They're not here.
with a $2,300, 2,300% increase.
Nobody here.
Not here? Okay.
Not yet.
All right, we'll move back, we'll move on to Economic Development Commission. Anybody here for that?
I love that face, Joe.
Yes, yeah.
I love that face.
That's me. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jeremy Rosner. I'm the chairman of the Economic Development Commission. I guess percentage-wise, this is a whopping increase to our budget, but dollars and cents-wise, it's not too large of an increase. Basically, we're looking to increase the budget to do two things. One is to have a constant outreach to the business community through biannual letters from the selectmen to the business community, basically stating on what's going on and what we're working on to try to develop and further business development down in the business district. And the second is we're trying to establish and develop a beautification plan for the business district to try to build some continuity and a little bit of curb appeal down in the walking areas of the business district. The idea is to have basically half wine barrel planters that would be bought and sent around the entire business district so that we'd have seasonal flowers and plants in those potters as the year goes on. So that $1,000 is to purchase the barrels and get them out there, and then we're working on a plan currently on how we're going to maintain them and keep them up. But, you know, this year's goal is really to be a resource for the business district and to support them and to try to use our commission as a sounding board for what the business community is looking for, as well as the commercial owners of the properties down there. So we have a commercial owners property forum coming up, where we're gonna meet with the people that are owners of those commercial areas to try to find out what they want from Woodbridge and what they want from the commission, and how we can help their tenants, increase their business. So, basically, that's the reasoning for the increase. The only other increase on here that you'll see is to, basically add a bit of a search engine to the Woodbridge website. So Search Site Finder is basically the Connecticut State Economic Resource Commission's database for real estate property in Connecticut. And we'd like to add that piece to the website on the economic development page so that if folks want to come and they want to open a business in Woodbridge, they'd be able to go to our page and actually do a search through all the vacant properties that are listed from the state of Connecticut and use it as a resource so they can know what's available and reach out to the folks that are representing those properties. So we're working on that. Basically, we have the budget for what the town would put out there, which is, I think it's about $300, and then we'd look for a sponsor from the business community to sort of sponsor that, the rest of the cost.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, as a realtor, I think that, when folks are coming into a town and they're looking for property, it's a way for them to really, if they call the town, if they call, the selectman's office, you can point them to that direction saying, you can go on our site, we actually have the properties that are vacant there for you to look at to see what's available, and just another resource. So the goal this year is really to try to show our presence in the community and really be a sounding board for the commercial property owners and the businesses, and we want to try to help everyone do business and increase their business. And in turn, it'll make it a better place for our residents to shop and live and enjoy the town. So,
Any questions?
Could we also find out from the owners what they're willing to do to kind of spruce up their properties? Because I think it's a partnership with them.
well, absolutely. So we have, tentatively, we have a commercial property owners forum set up for, I think, the 5th and the 6th of February. And at that meeting, we want to engage them and find out, show them what we want to do and find out from them what they can do to try to further this. It's going to be a team effort.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, because there are some really nice visuals from some of the studies that have been done that actually show what it could look like if we had some commitment,
Right.
from the owners in addition to the town doing some work.
You know, it's gonna be small incremental steps, but if we start sprucing up Lucy Street and some of these other streets
Yeah,
where
yeah.
people are frequenting and doing business, I think it'll just add a little bit of a feel-good piece to the district, so
Great.
that's the goal.
Terrific.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, next is tax collector, which is tab 1155. Tax collector. Okay. Not too much of a change. Anything in particular you wanted to mention, Pat?
Yeah, let's see. I increased, postage, I wrote increase in postal rates, that's incorrect. It should say increase in numbers of, mailings sent. The postal rates so far haven't gone up. Okay. I've asked for an increase in our conferences, not quite back to where it was before, but, I hesitate calling her my assistant, but Linda Cahill and I have been going to all the conferences together since I began. And our big one is in March, it's 3 days. It's, for us, it's a little on the expensive side. And it has always been included in our budget, and it was cut last year. We're gonna try and make some kind of arrangements for this year, but I'd really appreciate it if part of it could at least be added back in for next year. It's very important. We learn a lot. We, both Linda and I are involved in the New Haven County chapter. I'm co-president, she's secretary. And I've been on the state board for a few years. And all of these things help because just small things that come up at meetings can affect all of us. Just the way one town handles it slightly differently than another. It's just important. I didn't bring a copy of it. In the last OPM, that schedule that they did that showed tax collection rates for the towns was in 17. They usually do it somewhere around February or March, so the 18 isn't out yet. On that particular year, we actually dropped a couple. We're now 9th in the state of Connecticut out of 169 towns. We were around 5 or 6. But a number of the towns who are above us sell their liens. Torrington sells all of their taxes. And at least 4 of the towns above us sell their tax liens and do tax sales, which we don't do. So it makes just enough of a difference to, let's see, we went to 99.6, and we were about 99.7 before. Just thought I'd mention that. For the towns around us, we're quite a bit higher than most of them in percentage of collection rate. I think that's about it. There's a few other increases, some of which we have no control over. One of our biggest issues is legal ads, and the state has seen fit to continue to make us do legal ads. And we're supposed to be doing 3 in a newspaper or publication that does it for 3 times. What I've been able to do is do 2 in the Register, and because we do that December, January newsletter that the town sends out and it goes to every household, I can use that. So that didn't cost us anything this time. But most of the ads, as other departments can attest to, run anywhere from $500 to $800 for one little ad with Register. It's very expensive. Car allowance, it's bank trips. I'd just like to mention too that not only do we do the taxes, Linda handles a lot from the finance department. Tony can attest to that. She's extremely capable. And we, right now, do 2 runs to the bank a day, sometimes 3. Depends on how much cash we take in. Sometimes it's more than we'd like. So I like to get her out of here right away when that happens. Any questions?
Nothing?
Nope.
Okay. Thank
Thank
Pat.
you.
Thank you.
Doing what you're doing.
Great job.
Who's that guy? Oh, wow. Okay. Christine, unfortunately, it's yours now. We're missing our buddy, but I guess you're taking care of this. Or is that Andy? Andy's gonna come up too? Good.
Oh, I get to sit in the good chair.
So the next three are related, building, TPZ, and inland wetlands.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Andrew Rizzo. Go by Andy. I'm the new building official. As you've probably read, thank you. As you've probably read, it's a part-time position. We've cut it down to part-time, and Christine has taken over the other duties that Terry had. So I work 20 to 25 hours a week, depending on the load. I like to start at 8 o'clock. I like to do a couple of inspections on my way in. I live in New Haven, down by the airport, so it's a ride in about 25 minutes. And I like to do 2 or 3 inspections on the way in the morning, then come in and do office work and greet the public or whatever. And then if any other inspections come up, I do them on my way home. So the budget has actually decreased a little bit because my salary is half of what Terry's used to be. I'm a customer service type of guy. I believe in helping the public. That's what I'm there for. So if somebody needs something, I'll usually, take care of it as quickly as possible. One of the things I propose and I've already been, this is my 3rd week, so excuse me if I'm not up on everything that goes on here. I'll do better next year, I promise. But we talked about, and I've talked to Tony about it, is a proposal to add an additional fee to our building department fees, which is a certificate of occupancy fee and/or certificate of approval. When you take out a permit, you get one of those 2 things. And there's, work entailed to do it. And there's a lot of towns and cities that do charge the fees. Just so you know, my background, I worked in New Haven. I started in New Haven. I was 2 years in North Branford, then I went to Windsor for 5 years, and I came back to New Haven, and I spent 13 and a half years there as the building official. And I've been retired for almost 7 years, and I guess I'm not retired anymore. So we thought that CO fee might be something to consider, and hopefully it will be discussed, and it might be something we can implement with the new fiscal year.
Andy, how does that work?
Well, so if any permit you take out, the building code says you have to either get a certificate of occupancy
Right.
or a certificate of approval.
Right.
So when we take in a permit, we charge a fee based on our fee schedule, and then we would also charge the additional $30 separately as either a C of O fee or a certificate of approval fee.
Okay.
Yeah, based on the number of permits, and I've reviewed the past couple of years, and let's say we do 850 to 900 permits, and I'm confident in the next fiscal year we'll do that. So it's $30 times that, and it's about $2,700. Not a lot of money, but it is something that
More than that.
Huh?
More than that.
27,000, I'm sorry, 27, so I lost this zero.
I'm here.
That's why you're there, that's right.
I'm here, Andy.
So, yeah, so it's not a drop in the bucket, and, it ends up, paying for some of the other expenses we have down there. And it was just an idea that I had since I've dealt with it in my 23 years working as a building official.
I just want to note that normally now, the way the banks are working, they want definitely to see
Right.
those items, and so this is something that's the banks are looking for. And so Kathy's been quite busy doing them with Andy and whatnot, so.
Because it takes a visit to actually grant a certificate of occupancy.
Yes, it's
right?
based
And then there's
on-
there's paperwork.
Yeah, and
Okay.
then it references to the specific permits that, are being closed out, so.
Right.
You know,
Makes sense.
I don't think there'd be any objection to that.
So that's something that, that'll be coming before you all in the near future.
All right, you're hired.
Just this morning, I reviewed the online permitting, which has sort of been a little bit of limbo lately, but I'm ready to go. I'm familiar with this program. I used it in New Haven. I've also, since I've retired as a consultant, have used it in several of the towns that have this program. It's a great program because it gives the citizens a chance to, number one, take out a permit from home, as well as the contractors. Number two, it allows them to follow through what's happening with the permit, with the inspections, and so forth. So it's a very good tool, and it will save us time. And I think that the citizens will appreciate it once we get it going. I expect that, listen, I'm not gonna give you a time, but I think that we'll be up and running at least by the end of this fiscal year, but I think much before that. So my plan is to get it going as quickly as possible. Just some comments about the proposed budget. As you see, the building official salary has been reduced. The general provision services stayed the same, the $5,000. That's for if I have to bring in some extra help for inspections. If, let's say, in the middle of the summer, it really gets crazy, and I just can't keep up with it, then we can bring in some help. Or if I need an expert, such as a soils expert or a structural engineer or anything that I need to hire in order to make sure that there's not an issue with one of the projects. We added in a new category, car allowance. I'm gonna be using my own vehicle. I feel more comfortable with it. Plus, as I said, I like to come in, stop and do the inspections on my way in. So rather than come to the town hall, pick up the town car, then go back out, and so Tony and I worked this out, and I think it'll work out very well. The last thing I just want to mention is a line item, 54,640, professional development subscriptions and dues. There's a new building code going to be adopted by the state of Connecticut as of October 1st of this year. And so we have to buy all new books. All the old books, we'll keep them, but we gotta now have the new books. So we'll be spending some of this year's budget on that and some of next year's budget on it. Just to make sure we have all the proper books and gives me all the tools I need. So that's basically all I have to say. I'm glad to answer any questions.
So I have a question. If you're using your own car, do we need the repair and maintenance for the vehicle line, 53520? There's $2,000 there.
Yeah, it should go.
We can take that out. Okay, good. And then one other question. I think that blight issues come to the building official, is that
kind of
correct?
issues?
Blight?
Yeah, Tony called me one day, said, do you know anybody we could hire as a part-time blight official? And so,
We're working on it.
yeah,
Okay.
we're working on it, but what I
Okay.
said is, I will fill it. I've done blight. I spent 7 years in the New Haven anti-blight department, so I have a very good idea.
Like I said,
There's
you're
a
hired.
lot more blight in New Haven than there is here, believe me.
I think so.
But so I've offered to help out, and I'll help Christine. So we'll work
Okay.
together on these things.
Okay. Because we've had people make some public comments about some blight issues. The ordinance actually just got changed.
I know it did.
So,
Yeah, I have
okay.
my copy.
Okay? All right, thank you.
That's it. That's all I got.
Anything else? Well, thank you and welcome aboard, Andy.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. TPZ ZBA 1180. Further down the road, yeah.
So on town planning and zoning, there's a little bit of a change because I now get to do zoning enforcement, and so there was a slight increase in my salary based on that, and so there's a change in that, and I believe that that's the only change that we're seeing in there.
Yeah,
If I just double check it.
because that's you, Christine.
That's me,
Okay.
yep.
And the car allowance, the same thing.
And then we did include a car allowance in there just because I have no clue how much time,
That's right,
you know,
figure it out.
I may do stuff on the way in a town and out of town. But there are some weeks where I've gone out and kind of done a roundabout, and so, that's in there and whatnot. Same thing with inland wetlands, there's been an increase, we didn't put any car allowance in there, we're just gonna channel it all into one, thing, but there is an increase in there because I've also assumed the title or hat of, wetlands enforcement. So, that means I get to go out and look at silt fence and all that other good stuff, which I love to do, so. And then on zoning board of appeals, it's the same that we've had before. I do note that in all three of these, there is a line item for, a part-time clerical, which is someone who's supposed to help do minutes. The woman that we had a health issue, and she had to step back from that. We have not yet been able to locate anybody to do that, so, I've been going to the meetings and doing the minutes and whatnot, so we've left it in there, because at some point, we may need somebody to step back into that role. But other than that, Kathy and I are thrilled with having Andy on board. We did make once we met Andy, we made a pitch to Tony and everybody else to, see if we could get him here, and so,
I was done before I got going.
Yep, and we're just really happy to have him with us. We're very confident, in having somebody who's as knowledgeable as he is about building and, his persona working with the public and whatnot, and it makes our lives much easier to have, somebody like Andy there, so we're truly thrilled to have him on board.
It's good. You're doing a great job. No complaints.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions on these three, four, whatever we have here? No?
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you
Good
so
luck.
much.
all right, the center, who's doing the center? Tony's doing the center, that's 11? Tony's doing the rest of these, okay. 1190.
I know.
My wrist. All right, slight increase, mainly electrical. Anything
Not much
special on
happening
that?
here, no.
Okay. All right, I don't think anybody's a question on that. Former fire station.
This is,
Very interesting subject.
so currently the budget is not much change from the previous year. Obviously, if there's if the building moves forward with construction, this may change. But for the present time, I felt it was just appropriate to keep it where it is.
Okay. All right,
Keep you guys informed.
yep. Medical services.
I just want to
Go
point
ahead.
out that there is no 1192, which was formerly the country club budget.
Oh,
because
how
we-
come?
So,
I
previous,
always wanted that in the budget,
previous, because we took out all the utilities and there was just a maintenance.
just for me.
There was just a grounds maintenance line in there, which, we didn't put in, so should you want to do some grounds maintenance, we can
We'll figure it
put
out.
that into the parks budget.
Yeah, we'll get it for us.
So, yeah, just wanted to mention that.
Okay.
Okay.
Medical services.
Medical
Why don't you
services-
just update people, that
Sure.
contract is up and there's
Contract was up
discussions.
on, December 31st, has been extended to February 28th. Other than that, we are currently in process of trying to figure out next steps. We do not have a clear path forward at this point.
Tony, have we
So
done
we
what was
kept the budget where it is until we figure out what the next steps are. AMR, correct.
So what are some of our options, or is it?
How much time you got?
Yeah, it's a rather long and involved
see.
process,
Okay,
but
forget
it
it.
would
Very
be
complicated.
staying with
started
them or
the,
going to another carrier.
The main
Another-
process
Okay.
that's required in terms of getting back what we needed, has that started?
That, process, we're in the process of beginning that,
Okay.
yes. It's an long and involved process, to say the least.
And they're not easy to work with, to say the least.
How much are we expending right now?
We're just at about 300,000.
300,000.
No, so we've extended it to,
Oh, right, and you mean to the extension? The prices stay the same. There's no increase in the extension
We
period.
extended it for 60 days, I believe, at
Correct.
this point.
Right.
That's it.
So it was the same payment as it was in December, as it was in January and February.
so we
Is that
basically
your
just
question?
extended the contract, is that what we did?
Correct.
For 2 months.
The term
For
for
2
2
months.
months,
So
at the same rate. Everything else the same.
are we expecting to have it addressed by the time it comes up, or are we gonna go month to month, or 2 months
That's a
to
good
2
question.
months?
That's currently
Stay
being,
tuned.
yeah, stay tuned.
I guess other towns that have taken this on, it's a battle.
Yes,
It's a major battle.
yes.
But you can save hundreds of thousands of dollars
Expensive,
if
yeah.
you succeed.
That's the goal.
So there's an
And that's the goal.
incentive,
I mean,
there
that's
is
the
an
goal.
incentive
There is an incentive out there,
to renegotiate this.
yes.
Yeah, so that's right, yeah.
But I know the legal fees to accomplish this are significant. So,
But they would not be, they would be offset by the amount of money.
well, we'd
we
have to
would
see
save.
that. I think,
Well, I'm
I
not
think
sure.
you'd have to see that. Yeah, we'd have to see that. It's easy to say, but let's,
Right,
we'd have to see it.
we're working on it.
Yeah, so more to come on that.
Correct. A lot more to come.
All right. Another hotbed, Thomas Darling House. I'm sure you've all seen that on TV. Well, you probably don't watch the meetings as much as I do. So, Thomas Darling House, this is negligible, but,
These are simply the utilities for the Thomas Darling House. That are paid each year. This is, a current estimate of what those utilities are. The big variable here is typically, the oil heating one. And there is a corresponding revenue item of which we have historically received 100% reimbursement from the Historical Society for these utilities.
no, the rent that's paid, doesn't the
rent-
caretaker pay rent
Caretaker pays the rent
To
and rent is
them?
paid to them.
to the Historical Society?
Yeah, and then they pay us for the utilities.
Okay.
So as you can see, if it's $1,000 a month, you can sort of do the easy math here. It's 12,000 versus anywhere between 7, 8, or 9 for the utilities.
So I noticed, Tony, that, this is an actual decrease from the actuals from 2018-19.
Electric, yes.
Yeah, well, it's everything. It's electric, oil is down, and water's down.
Right,
Okay,
right.
and that,
That's just my estimate of
Okay.
where I think it could possibly be.
okay.
But we'll do it, because there's a revenue item that's supposed to match this. You know, they sort of wash each other. so
Sure,
It doesn't really,
understood.
it doesn't
Yeah.
really, you know.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And do these numbers include the utilities in the apartment?
Yes,
They do.
yes.
This is full
For the whole-
utility
whole
expenses
structure.
for everything that.
Yeah, it's for the whole facility, yeah.
For those of us interested, probate 1120, that's just a contractual $9,500. And animal control 1250.
Animal control is currently 3 towns contribute. Actually, I've been discussing with the animal control officer about ways to reduce the budget and be a little more efficient with some of the operations, so we anticipate this will be reduced for the next round of discussions. It's currently, there's 2 ACOs, so this is our portion, and then there's also we charge Bethany and Seymour also for their portion of this operation. So I provided you with the complete budget and then the breakdown of each town and other assorted fees that we collect. And so there's 2 full-time ACOs and a few part-time kennel keepers. And that's one area where we're looking to become more efficient in, are the kennel keepers, and hopefully reduce some expenditures there. And just a little flavor for the facility receives approximately 1,200, 1,300 calls a year. And those are calls where, not phone calls, but actual calls where they have to actually go somewhere and address an issue, not just someone calling on the phone, asking a question or stopping in the facility. And there's, depending on various years, it's anywhere between 130 and 150 impounds, which are animals that they take in. And then that's just one impound. Could be one day, could be 6 months. You know, depends on the situation.
Because we're a no-kill shelter.
Correct, right.
Have we looked into, and is there the capacity to take on any more towns?
We are always doing that on a continual basis,
Okay.
and can do that depending on the size of the town.
Right,
Yes.
right, but like Prospect or
Right, Beacon Falls, actually Beacon Falls was the one we discussed.
Okay. I mean, I don't know about
It's a tipping
Ansonia
point
and
where-
Derby.
Depending on the size of the town and the fee that they would pay and the workload versus having to add a part-time employee, or,
Sure.
we sort of have to figure out the mix.
Because
Let's
otherwise
see.
it's just neutral.
Right,
Right.
exactly,
Versus, increasing our budget,
right,
so.
right,
Right.
understood.
But yes,
Right.
so a smaller town might actually be better.
Okay.
Any questions on that? And that's about it. Tuesday looks rather ambitious, so, we have Woodbridge Board of Ed, we have, Recreation, Public Works, Fire Commission, so,
Bring our jammies.
and that's our last one. So, we'll see you all Tuesday.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Okay.